The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs, Judge Big Ben Haslar, Judge Jill and Jay Schlender, and Judge Season 4 and ready for more Ryan Luis Rodriguez presiding. Yeah, that's for the Honorable Judge, those guys.
Hey,
all
the
right.
Fab Four.
I love it.
Be seated,
All
the
had
rest
our
of
own
you.
Doors.
Yes, I heard 4 doors.
Yes.
They all sounded very similar, though, but there were 4 of them.
No,
Be seated. Welcome to The Appeals of Justice, Part Dos, The Revenge. That's right. For our Season 4 finale, we decided to finally cave, once more, we're doing that a lot, to the immense pressure from our millions of fans, speculative, around the world, speculative, and revisit some of our previous decisions, taking new evidence into consideration, hopefully, and determining whether the verdict for that case should be overturned or upheld. So, Dr. Bailiff, what do we have first?
First on the docket is ROJ-351, The People vs. Ready to Rumble, a 2000 buddy comedy about 2 pro wrestling fans who must help their sports entertainment idol win back the championship after being betrayed by an unscrupulous promoter. The court previously rendered a verdict of guilty.
Who let the bailiff have this many lines? Why wouldn't you just have
This is only ours
Why wouldn't you just have the judge read that?
we had the bailiff read it last year.
Poor guy. Well, we're doing it the rest of the day, too. I'm sorry, Ben. Thank you. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, you are representing the defense, I suppose. You may proceed with your first exhibit.
Okay, thank you, Your Honors. It is once again my distinct privilege to be appearing before you all for the Appeals of Justice, a duty I take very seriously.
Speculative.
However, I did pick a very stupid movie. And I do want to start with that admission. Ready to Rumble is stupid, but it is not a bad movie. So when we had our case with Robin Warder, who was a great guy, and he went up against Maynard Bangs, another great guy, and they're both very big wrestling fans, and that made for a very interesting show full of fantastic sound effects and a very good judge on that one.
Is that Ryan?
I was the judge.
Of course it was you. I knew that.
Okay, I was just saying, I was the judge on 3 of these cases.
You complimented him, so I knew it was you.
Well, I've got compliments for Ryan, too. They're all coming up. My point is, we framed a lot of the conversation around wrestling and how wrestling fans would view this movie. And even at the end, we had the admission from Maynard after the verdict was read that he actually agreed with it. So it turns out I was the only one in the court who actually thought this movie was not guilty. And I think a lot of that has to do with my perspective as more of a casual wrestling fan, and the ability to not only appreciate some of those wrestling elements that were in the film, but to pull back, right? Being able to divorce myself from from my wrestling knowledge, which again, not as extensive as Maynard or Robin, but actually look at this movie as a buddy comedy, as an adventure movie first. And if we do that, we can acknowledge it's a product of its time. And that's going to be one of the points we need to discuss, is a lot of the physical and gross out humor that we see in this movie. But we do see that in a lot of 2000s comedies. And I mean specifically the year 2000, not just the 2000s writ large, including but not limited to the physical comedy we see in Shanghai Noon, the gross out comedy we see in Little Nicky, the Nutty Professor 2, and we could even look at Scrooge starring the late
Why
great,
the Nutty Professor 2 and not 1?
because it was literally from the year 2000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I guess the Clumps have more gross out humor.
And that is too. Again, it's all with, the farts and the poop jokes and things. And these are all cut from the same cloth. But once we move past those butt jokes, those poop jokes, which I admit are glaring, however, in the context of the movie, are pretty limited and in the front end, we do see two dumb friends, granted, on a fun adventure to meet their hero, who was played very aptly by Oliver Platt. The structure here for this whole movie is fundamentally good and time-tested. Now, it might be a little tropey, but we constantly say in this court that it's okay to work within your genre, and it's okay to work with tropes. We do see the characters grow. We see the characters learn and ultimately get a happy ending. I feel a point that was glossed over in the original defense that Maynard made was how David Arquette's character Gordy comes full circle of not wanting to be a cop, but then wrestling as a cop, and we get to see his father cheering him on because the only thing his dad really wanted him to do was have a life that was productive and meaningful, and then he got to see Gordy have that life while they were watching the final wrestling scenes. So I understand we can't ignore the wrestling.
I remember being glossed over as much as being denied.
Yeah, well, I do think it's a salient point, and I want to bring up more original points, but I really thought that was such a strong point that goes towards intentionality, so I wanted to really have that in the mix. And as I move more towards this intentionality, that's kind of just how we're going to get kicked off with just how Gordy's character was able to grow. But let's actually look at the rest.
Can I ask questions from the mention name point?
Yeah, I suppose.
So
I guess you all could if you want to.
The intention of the film is clearly to cash in on the huge popularity of pro wrestling at that time in the framework of this, buddy comedy. What do you get for star powers as far as the wrestlers go?
That's a good question.
You don't get Ric Flair, you don't get Hulk Hogan, you don't get the wrestlers that had ever led a movie before. Instead, they let Oliver Platt be the lead wrestler.
Well,
he can't wrestle.
Ric Flair in.
I'm saying that's. Oh no, but he is a big star. You're right, though. He was probably in the back. He was in the background of some movie.
Probably. And then obviously the more prominent wrestling movie before this would have been No Holds Barred with Hulk Hogan. Mm-hmm. And, we've seen the Hulk in some other movies. I think it was a wise decision to avoid some of those stars. I mean, you did have Sting in this, who was absolutely huge. And
cameo at the end.
He was in it even before that. And then you have Goldberg, who is very big as well, and then you have Macho Man Randy Savage at the start of the movie.
Better than Spider-Man.
Yeah, and yeah. So, I could appreciate the argument of missing out on some of that star power, but you also have to understand that if you had a guy like Hulk Hogan in this, it would be suffocating. There is still a story to tell. So I do kind of reject your premise that the whole point of the movie was just to cash in on the wrestling. We do have a good story here. We do have some interesting characters lining up. Like Martin Landau is not a professional wrestler. This may shock you all, but he is very, very funny as the wrestling teacher. And having a guy with the physicality of Oliver Platt is not a small man, and his double at the time was the wrestler named Chris Kanyon. Who better? We get to see an interesting actor do something with this role, and we still get to see the physicality of the wrestling, right? And actually moving in to Chris Kanyon, I want to point out how even critics at the time and wrestling superstars even nowadays have recognized how good the wrestling choreography is in that movie. And that would be even CM Punk, who maybe I shouldn't have mentioned him. He's kind of like the Ebert of professional wrestling. Who am I kidding?
I know.
But even him admitting that it was like good choreography, commenting like on the suplex at the beginning of the movie. He did a little one of those GQ breakdown movie scenes of wrestling kind of videos, and he gave Ready to Rumble some high marks, you know. And Oliver Platt was at first very dismissive of maybe like kind of doing the film and professional wrestling until he started working with Canyon, until he started watching and learning about the history. And now Oliver Platt had became a big wrestling fan, to say nothing of how we saw David Arquette move forward in his wrestling career later in his life because of this movie. So I guess where I can start wrapping up here for you, and I can field any questions, is wrestling is interesting because it is contrived, because it is a work. Gordy yelling, "It's not fake," is not actually too far off the mark, you know, the mark, because there is a tremendous amount of physicality and real damage that goes into making professional wrestling work. And Ready to Rumble chooses to play with all of these facts to its advantage, and I would say to masterful effect. This is kind of like the movie equivalent of mixing every single soda from the fountain into one cup, because you have the kayfabe.
A suicide?
Yes, but
Teaching
it all works because you have these hilarious instances where the wrestlers are having a real fight, but it's a fake fight, and if they're going for the title, like that can't be, you know, that has to be planned. And the movie gives so many winks and nods at the very end where the promoter is yelling at the crowd. He says, "I made professional wrestling." He said, and that's true. The promoters do that. They do all the booking. They put this all together. And then when Gordy says, "No, it's the fans who did," I mean, that's just such a classic kind of kayfabe marking out moment that exists in real wrestling, you know, where the fans put themselves up on a pedestal, but you know, the promoters are always trying to get themselves over, which is to say, to get over is to become popular. So I think some of these elements that people might view as dumb, or some of the more hoity-toity wrestling fans would find insulting, I think they really work in that sweet spot.
Wrestling fans.
Yeah, well,
That's a
hey,
misnomer.
dude,
That's
No,
a
it's
misnomer.
not. No, it's not.
they exist. They
Snobs
exist.
of every order exist.
Yes, and
Wait till you meet the guys who won't watch anything except Japanese pro wrestling in the original Japanese commentary. I was one of them.
no, but so that's my point, is if you go into this movie with that right mindset and you have just a little bit of wrestling knowledge to be, I don't want to say dangerous, but you can have some more fun with it. And I think the movie gives you enough tools to understand what's going on, even if you're not a huge wrestling fan. So I think it hit the marks it was going for. Obviously, you know, like it wasn't a financial success. And I think you do have to acknowledge, you know, that it did offend some of the fan base, but the more critical distance this movie is getting, the softer reception it's getting from those same fans that so hated it. You can I watched a bunch of wrestling YouTube videos for people discussing this movie from 10 years ago, discussing it when it was contemporary, through interviews all the way through now. And as time marches on, the perception of this movie is changing with those fans. So I think we're going to see those fans, that was a lot of the reason we found this movie guilty, was because the fans didn't like it. That opinion is changing. That tide is turning. And I think a lot of it has to do with quality programming like us, and analysis that I just
question from the
provided.
bench on that point, though.
Sure.
Like it portrays the wrestling fans as idiots, as people who like make people smell their poop and things like that. Is that a flattering portrayal?
I think it's supposed to be, again, it is a comedy first, right? And it's very easy to make fun of wrestling fans, and wrestling fans are used to it. I mean, you have to understand, there's a lot of people in this movie calling them stupid, right? Like the convenience clerk is calling them stupid, the father's calling them stupid. I mean, the girls working at the restaurant. So there are a lot of people calling them stupid because wrestling fans are used to being called stupid before taking it too seriously. Now these guys are stupid to a point where they're actually going across the country to get the king back in the ring, which is a funny plot device for the movie. But I think wrestling fans can look at this and say, yeah, those guys are stupid, but this is more about having fun with the idea than it being just a straight up insult like hammer to the face.
I have another question.
Sure.
Is like the wrestling is fake, right? Like we know that John King is acting throughout the whole thing. Yet at the end of the film, like Sting comes in and this like big showdown, like it's real. But wouldn't that have been scripted? Did they have an answer for whether the wrestling at the end was real or fake?
I think that is a very good question, Ben. And one of the ideas for the original ending that Diamond Dallas Page had pitched, and you'll remember he's the main heel in this movie. He actually pitched the idea of the whole movie being a work at the end, that him and Jimmy King were going to shake hands. Yeah, shake hands.
I love that idea.
Yeah, no, and Jimmy
That's
King,
good. They should have done that.
and Jimmy King was going to say like he recruited those two guys because they believed so much, and I think that might have been too much of a joke to pull over on the main characters. But that was why I was saying what was interesting about this is that it's playing with the ideas of kayfabe. It's like, what if wrestling was real, but it's still fake? It keeps it's kind of like dancing in between the raindrops, right? It's moving in and out of it being fake, of it being real. So when Sting shows up and Tony Schiavone yells, "It's Sting!" It's like,
Flawless.
that is obviously something that in real life would be completely part of the work. But him like sliding in out of nowhere and it being a shoot is just hilarious too. So that's why this works, because if you believe it's a work, it's a really well put together match. If you believe it's a shoot, it's just insane and hilarious, which works for this movie because it is a comedy first.
So we want to start locking in.
Judge
Well, if
Rodriguez,
Ryan
did you
has
have any questions?
Questions for me?
I did you rewatch this movie to get all that
yes.
information? Because I did not, and I've even forgotten what happened in this movie. So I'm gonna have to take everything you say on faith, because you could be completely full of shit. I wouldn't know. I have no. All I remember is David Arquette sticking his finger in his butt and making somebody smell it. That's all I remember.
That's all you remember? He
was
like
enough to
jumped.
make me hate this fucking movie.
He like jumped a motorcycle into like a steel cage or something. Like you didn't remember that?
Nope. No.
I don't either. No, not at all.
Not a single bit.
Yeah, that last match was really cool. A triple steel cage for the title. And, it was really good. And it actually was funny, too. Some people were saying, like, oh, DDP would never take that spot of falling through 3 cages. So, again, that's another thing that makes the movie interesting, is that since it is such a movie, right, you can make these crazy things happen that you can't really do in real wrestling, with a few exceptions. Like maybe Mick Foley would be crazy enough to do that. Like you'd have some people who would be crazy.
Pretty sure they did have a spot where somebody fell through those triple cages.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been DDP,
No, DDP.
Yeah, but but that's what's so neat about that movie is like
crowbar.
It lets them play around in this world where it's like half real, half fake. But since it's a movie, it gets to be half real, half fake, while all being fake. It's a lot of fun.
Well, judges, have no more questions. We're going to just start locking in. I can't remember how exactly we do it. Well, I guess I think you guys are going to be more the bearers of bad news, so I'll let you go first.
I regret doing this because I feel like I'm going to need a swing vote for the next counselor's exhibits coming up. But I'm just stuck on the fact that it does not portray these wrestling fans well. And if it's a fan for wrestling fans, then I don't think it works.
Some of that's your personal thing. You're so focused on the farting and butt stuff, you forgot that these fans also went all the way across the country, inspired a man to fix his life up. Basically, one got into shape to wrestle himself. The other one's like a promoter, like he gets a whole suit. I mean, so they go from being losers to being winners. The movie is about them going from being losers. So they start as losers, but they end the movie as winners. And even if they had done the storyline, which I loved, if DDP did the twist at the end where it was all a work, it wouldn't have been bad to them because they went, boys, you really believed, though. Your belief was genuine. Your belief was real. That's like always the wrestling thing. The show's fake, but your enthusiasm's real. And that's what made the boys special. So they start as losers, but they end as winners. That's
fair. No, you've turned my mind on that. That's a good argument. But I will still stick to like the ending, where the wrestling's fake or not. Like if you're not a wrestling fan and Sting comes in, you don't care. You only care about any of this if you are a wrestling fan.
And to me, that's more the sticking point. If you're not the wrestling fan, the star power moments don't have any effect on you.
Not at all. So I think it could be an enjoyably bad movie for wrestling fans if that's what you're into. I will stick with guilty for the general public.
I'll let Ryan be the decide by locking in myself. I can't remember if I necessarily. I guess I must have said that I did think it was guilty. It is cursed by not getting the full star power that WCW had at that time. I'm sure the original script probably was Hogan as the bad guy because he does very evil Hogan things like controlling the whole business. And I bet DDP would have been the good guy. He would have been Jimmy King and would have been excellent. And because they couldn't get Hogan, they decided to switch it over. I bet you that there's some history on that. But I always did think there's kind of a heartwarming, happy moment. I like these kind of 90s comedies. I get the extra bonus of getting wrestling star power. But besides that, I mean, you have the normal dick fart jokes that if you're in the mood for that kind of comedy, I always liked this as a teen boy who this would be aimed at. So I'll go not guilty, and we'll let Ryan break your heart.
Fuck it, not guilty.
No!
Oh, no way!
Why, at least? Was it his honeyed words?
Because he spoke with such conviction, and I was listening to it and going, well, if he can wring all that stuff out of what he saw, then it couldn't be that bad, now could it? Even though, again, I have no knowledge that this movie actually exists. I cannot prove it. So I'm just going to have to go not guilty.
Fantastic. Then,
I think Ryan's going to be Mr. Nice Guy this episode. I think he's going to overturn them all.
I have a migraine. I'm going to be very nice to everybody.
Oh, good. I need it. The decision in ROJ-048, the People versus Ready to Rumble, has been overturned. Ready to Rumble is found not guilty of being a bad movie. Bailiff, we'll now hear the next case.
I am so shocked.
Me too.
Next, we have ROJ-150, The People versus Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This 2005 sci-fi comedy is about everyman Arthur Dent, who is thrown into an intergalactic adventure after Earth is destroyed to make way for a hyperspace bypass. The court previously rendered a verdict of guilty.
Thank you. Mr. Big Ben Haslar, you are representing the defense. You may proceed with your first exhibit.
Yes, where'd that other Ben Haslar go? That
was the bailiff, I believe. The judge? Oh, I stepped out to the bathroom, I think.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Mr. Schlender just came back from sabbatical. Judge Schlender.
Hey, what'd I miss?
Yes, good afternoon, Your Honors. Initially, it was my plan to overturn the verdict awarded to Neil deGrasse Tyson in The People vs. Porky's 2.
No,
I decided that
he knows what he did.
I didn't want his lawyers suing my ass for slander, so I reached out to Reels of Justice superfan Izzy Turan, for which case she, the people, deemed the most unfair. And the answer came back loud and clear: Hudson Hawk. But after that, it was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
So glad you don't listen to
Good
this.
Good call.
And I in no way wish to insult the prosecuting litigator in those proceedings, Simon Majumdar. But I do think the mark was missed in a few ways during that case and the deliberation that merits a reappraisal. The primary argument seemed to be, as he put it in culinary terms, the director had access to the freshest ingredients and the most outfitted kitchen and somehow delivered what he called slop. This boils down to expectations going in. Simon and many others came to this film expecting one thing and were delivered a different take on it. Many of those expectations are unfair. Essentially, if you're familiar with the radio series or TV serial, you'd be expecting a delivery to be made one way and would hear it in a different way and think, oh, that's different and weird. So you might not like it, which isn't the fault of the makers of this film. If you came in assuming a previous version was perfection, how could a different vision possibly meet your criteria? I can say from my own perspective, while I had read the novel, I went into this film for the first time to experience Hitchhikers, and I had never heard a previous version, and I thought it was great. I loved Arthur, Zaphod, Marvin, and the plethora of other side characters, and laughed aplenty about that dry British wit. There were changes done to the novel, sure, but there have been changes in every iteration of Hitchhikers. I knew that going in. So it had to be tweaked from iteration to iteration, and these tweaks were instigated by Douglas Adams himself, as the defender Ryan Luis Rodriguez pointed out. Another complaint that seemed to resonate with the jury was that they couldn't dissociate Alan Rickman or Helen Mirren from the characters they portrayed. And to this I say, come on. Alan Rickman has always been Alan Rickman. Are you telling me you're not painfully aware of who he is in Galaxy Quest or Harry Potter? Of course you are. You wouldn't vote down Schwarzenegger or Sly Stallone for being who they are. This is what we want. We want the nuance. They're good actors. We want the nuance in their performance. And that's true of Rickman. It sounds like him, but he does this very depressed version of him. He takes on each line and lets that existential dread sink in, yet in a way that sounds effortlessly amusing, as only he can do. I know. Dreadful, isn't it? That's a terrible impersonation, but how funny is it?
It's no Tony Schiavone.
No. When Marvin shoots his pursuers with the point of view gun, an invention new to this film, and hearing all the Vogons talk about how depressed they were in Alan Rickman's distinct inflections. I love that moment. And as for Helen Mirren, I say yes. It's a short role. It would have been irritating if they made it longer, or if they cast someone else who can't deliver the signature lines in about the greatest answer with the Briticism that it deserves. It has to be a prominent English actress in that role, or at least one that can do that voice to get the job done. And I love this scene where she just they build it up, and what's the answer? What's the answer? And she comes back 42 and just stunned silence. And then that one incredulous British guy, 42. I love it. It's so funny. This is not tantamount to a bad movie. Deschanel may be asleep. I'll grant you that one. And lastly, Your Honors, I would like to add 2 new pieces of evidence for your consideration. One of which was talked briefly and the other not at all, which isn't a criticism of Counselor Rodriguez, by the way. He deserved a winning case as it was, but we have to sort of prioritize our arguments and can't be mind readers as to what the jury cares about. One is how perfect the segments of the guide itself were, from the delightful menu animations to the spot-on delivery by Stephen Fry. We have already iconic lines about Vogon poetry, how the guide surpassed the Encyclopedia Galactica because it was slightly cheaper, how God created the universe and has since made very many people unhappy and has widely been regarded as a bad move, all the way to the credits where there's these warriors resplendent in their black jeweled battle shorts. You love these sequences, if you're being honest with yourself. And the other, of course, is the song, So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. It sets the joyous tone early about how dolphins punching footballs in the air while whistling the Star-Spangled Banner were warnings of Earth's impending doom. And it was done in the most delightful way possible to have this song as your opening credits. And as such, I have a message from the dolphins, Earth's most second intelligent creature, to Earth's second most intelligent creature, to mankind, Earth's third most intelligent creature, as their intellect has ordained that this appeal will be successful. Let me wet my throat.
Absolutely.
me.
Well, that was a...
No, hold on.
Oh, you're still going? Oh, okay. Continue.
So long and thanks for the appeal. So glad there's justice for this real, and all the points that you have come around to. It's you did not share a point of view. How great the answer was 42, and all the witticisms that soared around you. So long, and thanks for the appeal. It's nice that we have come this far. No distort Simon Majumbadar, but that episode has caused some real hurt. Despite the critics' harsh decrees, we know that most of you were pleased. Just not Roper and that hacky bird. So long, and thanks for the appeal.
So you should have gone last because he had a song. How can anyone follow that now? Mr. Rodriguez, you were, the side of this case.
Yes, I was.
You'd like to start out with?
This was the most humiliating performance I ever had on this show. I was legitimately mad when the episode was over. I still think that this is a good movie. I know, surprise, I elected to represent this film not because it was pushed in my direction, but because I legitimately enjoy this film. And I agree with basically everything that Ben said, especially expecting something and not getting it to the degree that you expect it, which I think we already covered this on a previous movie, but The Last Jedi, will that have already aired by this time?
No.
Okay, well,
that's
never
not even
mind.
this season.
Then never
We
mind.
might even be doing Last Jedi. Who knows?
Well, let's say hypothetically we did. What are you talking about, Ryan?
People go into that movie expecting something. They did not get what they expected it to be, thus it was bad. I don't think that that's a valid criticism. I think that Hitchhiker's Guide, I actually think that it might be better than the miniseries. I can't say how it compares to the actual book or to the radio serial, because I have not listened to or read it. But my knowledge of the property comes from the miniseries, and I actually think that the movie might be better. So I can lock it in if you guys want me to.
Well, to me, it's not so much I didn't get what I expect. I liken this version of Hitchhiker to like MST3K's Hamlet, right? We know the script is good, but the performances are just so lousy that they make a good script bad. And I mean, besides Zooey Deschanel, I mean, I remember Martin Freeman a little bit, but I don't remember him doing anything all that much funny. I remember the robot, but he's just kind of being himself. I did like Stephen Fry, but I don't know that there was any benefit to this over, say, Stephen Fry reading the book out loud to me.
Well, so Ben, I want you to address a point that came up a lot in Simon's original argumentation that you didn't address here. He brought up the fact that part of what made Hitchhikers really good was that you had smart people saying funny things, and in this movie, it's kind of like dumb people doing what would ostensibly be funny things, right? So we're losing out on that wit that the book is so famous for. And just for my own priors, I had never read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I have no idea about the miniseries radio show. This was my first introduction to it. And I can tell you, just based off this movie, zero interest in reading the book or pursuing any of the material, which, you know, and people could say maybe that's not fair, but that's just the fact of the matter, that introducing Hitchhikers this way, I have zero interest in pursuing the series, regardless of how funny or interesting it's allegedly supposed to be. So can you address that point about saying something funny versus seeing something funny, and how that works as this adaptation?
Sure. Well, I do think it more boils down to the perceptions, but I guess if you didn't hear the other one, that kind of falls flat. I know that I kind of had that experience in the reverse when I watched the TV serial, and I was like, ugh, they didn't deliver that line in the way that I liked. So I think that most people feel that way. Are you saying like there's like these lines like the whale flying down to Earth, and he's like, oh, ground, this is so nice. I wonder if it'll be friends with me. You didn't crack a smile at all?
No, see, that was, and so then this dovetails back to the acting point too. Like, again, everyone, even in that case, admitted that Zooey Deschanel was not great. But Bilbo Baggins there, and like Bill Nighy's at the end of this movie, for crying out loud. He did like.
Oh, it's a great cast, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
it's just
the
not
thing,
good
is
performances.
you have this excellent cast, but I am struggling to remember anything really hilarious or that they said or did. I remember
besides
Sam
Stephen
Rockwell.
Fry. I remember Stephen Fry.
I barely remember Stephen Fry. I remember Sam Rockwell having a big personality in this.
I just remembered he was in this.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the thing.
He's also in Galaxy Quest.
Exactly. And I'll agree with you to a point. I have no problem with Alan.
He's also in Galaxy Quest.
This is true.
Essentially, it's a reunion.
Yeah, no, but that's like, I don't really have a problem with the robot character. I just like that character just seems kind of played out at this stage. And granted, maybe Hitchhikers was the one who did it first, but we're talking. This is we're into the 2000s already. Like sarcastic or depressed robots exhibiting negative human emotions. I just feel like it's been done.
I've got no problem with that, but the fact that he just straight up sounds like Alan Rickman, like it's a robot. Why can't he have a somewhat robot sounding voice?
Well, that was
and it's like
Ben's contention is that you don't lose Rickman in any of his roles. Like,
And you love those roles.
Right, maybe that's not a good thing. But it's not so much that I don't lose him. I never see a robot. He doesn't sound robot-y to me. So plus I don't really think of his voice as a depressed person, more like a mean person. But so
I mean,
anyway, let's lock in. Let's see which way it's gonna go.
All right. Ryan
seems pretty convinced. Let's let Ryan lock in.
Oh, okay.
Not guilty.
All right. I appreciate the passion that Ben brought, and I think it was a good point to bring up kind of those actual guide interstitials, but that doesn't get it out of bad for me. I mean, this movie was internally boring and unfunny, and I just don't see the appeal of anything Hitchhikers, and it's this movie's fault. So I'm sticking with guilty. Maynard?
I don't know. Like I said, I kind of equate it to Hamlet. I also equate it to, like, if you've met someone who read the book and they just start telling you the jokes, but they don't tell them all that great, and it's like, so it's 42, and they're just sitting there explaining it, and you're like, I'm sure this would be funny if I could just read it myself at the right pace, but you are not helping this right now. Like, this material is good, but you are not making me like it. And I just keep reading it to you.
Good though. That's the thing. Like, that's what everyone keeps saying. The material's good. This movie gave me no basis to believe that.
See, but I think that I do like it. Like, the answer to the universe is 42. But you also know it before you go in. It's so iconic now that joke is almost spoiled for you. And same with the dolphin stuff. Yeah. And a lot of the best stuff has become just so known.
And I think that's where the expectations come in, because this is a known quantity. If anyone who's going to see, like, no one's going to see this blind. Everyone's heard of this, especially if you're a nerd.
Yeah.
Well, some of the stuff is new, though. Like, the point of view gun is new to this film.
Me, it's more uninspiring than it is inspiring. I think they had great material. They had a great cast, and for this to deliver this, it didn't even get another movie. There's like 3 more books. Had this moved the needle at all, we'd have a series, and it couldn't even get that off the ground.
Well,
so
in defense, didn't Adams die during this too?
So yeah, he couldn't.
So somebody else buys the property. They continue the series. They can do that. Dying doesn't stop nothing. Lord of the Rings got made. So I'm gonna stick guilty.
Boo!
If Ready to Rumble's the only one that gets overturned here, the people will revolt.
I'll revolt. I think that's hilarious, though. But all right.
Well, let me just a little slightly scroll. Why aren't you scrolling? Thank you, Mr. Haslar. Let's see. So the decision in ROJ-150, The People versus Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, has been upheld. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is still found guilty of being a bad movie, and I hope it brings a towel. Bailiff, we are ready to hear the next case.
That would be ROJ-351, The People versus Batman and Robin, a 1997 action-packed superhero film that pits the dynamic duo against the sinister team of Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy. The court previously rendered a verdict of guilty.
Thank you. I'll take this one, Maynard.
For sure.
Because that's what the format demands.
I see that.
I don't call myself Schlenzo. You put this here.
Sure you don't. I've seen your underwear.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Bat Nipples, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You are representing the defense. You may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, I don't care for that nickname.
Understood.
All right. Stricken from the record.
I did not write anything down for this because, again, my head is really killing me. But I think I can defend this one on the backs of my feet. Okay, so this is a movie that people absolutely despise. But I think that they despise it for the reasons that it's trying to be itself. This is not the campiness of the film is not a bug, it's a feature. This is not trying to be a Tim Burton, German expressionist superhero movie. This is trying to be an episode of the 1966 Batman television series. Every single thing in the movie is designed as a mechanism for joke, setup, payoff. And this is a movie that when I was, this came out in 1997, so I was 11 when this movie came out. I loved this movie in the theater. I believe my favorite moment was when they showed Batman's credit card and it said expiration forever. It's one of those stupid things that I cannot help but find hilarious. And I kind of turned on it when the Chris Nolan Batman movies came along. And as Mike Natale, former guest of the show, said it had the big boy mentality. So it was basically looked at as heretical because it did not follow the broody, dark and gritty Batman. But after decades of dark and gritty Batman, we need more levity. We need more movies like Batman and Robin, movies that do not take themselves seriously, movies that play with the continuity a bit, like the fact that George Clooney's Batman does not seem to be terribly upset about his parents being dead anymore, which is great because we've fucking seen that in every single Batman movie. So instead, they extrapolate it to Alfred dying of a degenerative disease, and then that's him saving his parents. He finally gets to help his father figure in a way that he could never help his actual parents, and I actually think that that's kind of touching in a weird way. And if you dislike camp, I can understand not liking this movie, but you gotta engage with it on its own terms. It's not trying to be a serious big boy Batman movie. It's trying to be a lark. And if Adam West was in this movie and it came out today, and yes, I know Adam West is dead, but let's hypothetically say Adam West is still alive. This movie comes out today, Adam West is Batman in it, nobody would blink an eye. It would be completely like, yeah, that's exactly what we expected. That's exactly what it needed to be. And I cannot speak volumes enough about Uma Thurman's Mae West drag queen impersonation as Poison Ivy, which is just absolutely delightful. But I'd like to hear from what you have to say from the bench.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan. And this is an interesting case because I got to be the judge for it, and I wasn't actually in the jury. And Joel Schumacher, the director, I watched this very interesting interview he did with Charlie Rose when I was getting ready for The Lost Boys, and it just really endeared me to him. Can you tell us a bit about Joel Schumacher, his vision for this movie, especially coming off of Batman Forever? Because I think where this movie could be weak is it feels a bit like a Batman Forever retread, but I'm thinking the director is just too smart for that. So I would like to hear more on him, if you could.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's a retread. I would think that it's an evolution from the style that he established with Batman Forever. Because if you look at Batman Returns and Batman Forever in stark contrast, one after the other, there's a 3-year gap between them. You could swear that they were completely different universes. And in fact, when The Flash came out last summer, they basically confirmed that Michael Keaton exists in his own separate universe, and that Val Kilmer and George Clooney also exist in their separate universes. But
I hate this timeline.
this is probably his most auteurist vision. This is definitely everything that he gets out of the character. He's not necessarily a purist when it comes to the character, but he does harken back to the 3-strip Technicolor approach to Batman, and he's much less interested in the fastidiousness and the seriousness of it. And I think that if you enjoy the movie, you enjoy it because of his playful spirit that sadly is no longer around.
It is sad, and Flatliners is an awesome movie.
Oh, yeah.
So it is kind of silly, though, and we have to look at where Batman was moving at this time, because this is 1997. It's already after Batman Forever, which was pretty silly as well. I mean, we're already talking a couple years removed from the animated series.
Animated series is still on the air.
No, I thought that was done in 95. Or maybe you're right.
Started
Like
in like
the
92.
original.
No, it started in 93.
The new Batman and Robin Adventures, I believe, was
you know what?
when
You're right.
Batman
You're right.
And Robin came out.
Because
they mentioned Batman Forever in that series.
But my point is, we already had Batman not necessarily moving in like this gritty, dark direction that we saw from Burton. You know, you mentioned the German expressionism. You know, but was it wise to completely eschew what was happening in the Timverse, because that set the tone for so long, and we wouldn't see the silly Batman really again until like Batman Brave and the Bold, which I would argue is a much better execution of this vision than Batman and Robin is.
Have not seen Brave and the Bold, so I can't confirm that.
Oh,
all I know is that this is a movie that I soured on for years because I was told that I had to. And now that I come around to it, I can't say that it's a quote unquote good movie, but I have to say that it is an interesting one, and I'd rather take an interesting over good in this courtroom any day.
Well, I would ask this from the bench. You say it's campy and compare it to the 60s. To me, the 60s is a kids show. It's a television series. But this film is PG-13. So who is its audience exactly?
It's PG-13, but you could take a small child to this, and
You're not
aside
supposed
from
to. It's PG-13.
yeah, well, you could though. That's the thing. Like, you could not have a PG Batman movie at this time. It would be career suicide. So the fact that there's a 13 attached to that, I was 11. My dad took me to go see it. I'm pretty sure he'd be okay if I saw it alone. I think that
Yeah, I saw it in theaters
we need to
too,
go
and
back
that
to the
was-
levity. What I enjoy most about this movie is that it's wacky and it's plastic, but it's very light to the touch.
Hey, speaking of wacky, plastic, and light to the touch, let's hear from Big Ben.
Speaking of Big Ben, you mentioned like the big boy Batman. The problem for me with this film is it kind of comes on the back of the Burton films. I don't remember ever thinking these were like in separate realities. I remember thinking they were meant to be one to the other. And I remember like hearing Nicole Kidman say in an interview that like she didn't understand her character in Batman Forever. And Joel Schumacher said to her, like, it's a comic book movie. Nobody cares. Just, your motivations here don't really have to be all that deep. I kind of feel that carries on to Batman and Robin, because in Batman and Forever, they kind of realized the toynetics of it. They realized, oh, this does appeal to kids. We can make Batman in a freeze suit and a fire suit and a whatever. And Batman and Robin really tries to cash in on that. It's absolutely a product meant to sell as a vehicle to sell toys for kids. It's not meant to be, at least in my view, a honest to goodness film.
I don't question.
Well, rebuttal from the prosecutor.
I kind of want to address that, man. There are Batman toys forever, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were making tons of Batman the Animated Series toys for stuff that wasn't even in the show. Like I had a sweet Batman scuba diver, and you say like that's a bad thing. Having sweet toys was a great part.
No, I'm okay with the toys, but like the film is a vehicle to make toys.
And jokes. And
Transformers is a series that only exists to make toys, and it's a great series.
It hasn't been found guilty in this or not guilty in this courtroom.
Look,
so
I do think Schumacher is just too serious a director. I mean, great, he's making a silly movie, but he's taking it seriously. Like I don't see this as someone trying to cash in or make a corporate movie. Like his fingerprints are on this movie, and like I mean,
well,
like,
this movie is serious till
like,
it's not, right? Because or is silly till it's not, right? Because the character of Mr. Freeze and his whole plot line with his wife is a very mature storyline that would probably go over the heads of a lot of kids in some
Taken
way.
from the animated series.
I was gonna say,
taken from a much more mature, right? That's what I'm saying. So
kids
they're
were
picking and
watching
choose where they want some of the adult stuff and where they don't. And it's scary. Bane is scary to kids. Kids don't like it. Scary.
No, I don't think. See, I don't think Bane's scary, and I disagree with Ben's.
Do they murder his
premise,
character
this idea of
in this
watching-
film?
I don't.
He dies horribly. They unplug him and he shrinks. It's horrifying.
No, I mean he's not intelligent. He's just a goon in this film.
Yes. That is a bad portrayal of Bane. I know that's something that came up in the original case. Like that wasn't a good way to use him. Like a character like Solomon Grundy would have been much more effective for the way they used Bane.
Man, he'd been
Equalizer
perfect.
character.
Dude, he would have been perfect, and the Poison Ivy could have raised him from the dead totally.
Well, Poison Ivy and Grundy have worked together in the comics.
Perfect. Let's
before.
remake this movie.
No, like there was a lot of potential here, and that could be one of the deficiencies of Schumacher is that he just didn't quite understand where the direction comics and stuff were going. But I do respect his vision, and that like I was very happy with Ryan's answer for how this follows Batman Forever, how it's kind of that continuation, that evolution of his style. But they do feel like separate movies. The Keaton movies feel like their own thing. Batman Forever feels like its own thing. Batman and Robin feels like its own thing. Obviously, the Nolan versus its own thing. Because
I'd say this one feels
bigger.
tough because it's got the worst Batman, right? Like George Clooney is the lamest Batman. Like he's a lame Batman.
But like I think first of all, I think Chris O'Donnell is actually a really good Robin. Like playing a more mature.
I like
Robin.
him better in Forever, where he has kind of the darker edge than the silliness he does here.
Yeah, and I
Silverstone's super forgettable.
Yeah, I'll give you that. But then you got Arnie and Uma Thurman. Like, I think there's enough.
Oh yeah,
meat
the
on
bad
that
guys
bone.
do heavy lifting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I didn't get to be in the jury for this first case, so I'm happy I get to make a ruling now. I'm going to go ahead and lock in not guilty for this. I think this is one we should be overturning.
Big Bun?
I'm not convinced. It is silly. Like, I don't think it's bad for people to watch it, just like with Ready to Rumble, if that's your thing. But it doesn't follow the line. It is silly. It is a product. It is for kids. If you walked in as an adult to this film, even there are kids movies that can appeal to everyone. This ain't one of them. It's got the cartoon sound effects. It does look cool. It does look very cool. But the storylines don't go anywhere. Batman, Robin, and Batgirl, they're just there. Yeah, sorry, Ryan. You were so nice to everyone else, but I'm not feeling it. I'm sticking with guilty.
I think this movie did have a tough time finding an audience because I think that it had people who were following the original Burton movie. You've also got adults who are watching the animated series and want more of that. And then suddenly this just jukes in the 60s direction, and it may just have been a case of not then. That was the wrong time. People didn't want it then. I think looking back at it, it's so colorful, it's so vibrant, it is fun. It's, Ryan said it's levity, right? It is sort of a kid's movie, but it's more of a family movie. That's why it's PG-13. I guess everyone can kind of enjoy it. So I'm also going to go not guilty. I think this thing it's got a niche and it fills it.
Hey,
nice.
All right. The decision in ROJ-351, The People versus Batman and Robin, has been overturned. Batman and Robin is, well, that's good enough, is found not guilty of being a bad movie. Mr. Bailiff, let us move on to our final case.
Our last case of the day is ROJ-349, The People versus Silence of the Lambs. This 1991 crime thriller is about a young FBI cadet who seeks the assistance of an incarcerated serial killer in order to catch one still on the loose. The previous verdict was not guilty.
Thank you. Mr. Maynard Bangs, you are representing the prosecution. You may proceed.
Well, Your Honor, this has got to be the quickest turnaround we've ever had in appeals of justice. This was just a couple of episodes ago. And of course, very controversial that we would even hear this case. And there was a lot of screaming in the streets. Bobby pulled his hair out, I believe. I think you guys were all there. That we would even consider this case. And I thought that Rachel did a great job with it, but she came with a certain perspective. I want to focus on this prosecution from a different perspective. Now, canonically, Silence of the Lambs is not a sequel to Manhunter in the film universe. And I'd never seen Manhunter before, actually. I saw it for the first time recently. And I think
you.
With seeing it, that really changed the way I saw Silence of the Lambs after. Now, the books are direct sequels to one another. And so I think some of this can be traced back to the source material problem. But I feel like we can all kind of agree, this is basically the definition of a lazy retread. Let's see. Dr. Hannibal Lecter is once again employed to help catch another serial killer with a cute little nickname, Tooth Fairy Buffalo Bill. One who also uses night vision to stalk his enemies. One who also feels unattractive and unwanted and therefore wants to change and become someone else, and does so by especially killing women. Granted, the Tooth Fairy kills whole families, but it's clear that the focus of his obsession, the Red Dragon's obsession, is the mothers, the women. And basically it boils down to Buffalo Bill is just another Tooth Fairy. And that strikes at the heart of my problem with Buffalo Bill. He's underdeveloped. Now, especially compared to how much time we spend with Francis Dollarhide in Manhunter, the Red Dragon, how deeply we get into his head, the very real threat he possesses all the way throughout the film. When you compare Buffalo Bill side by side, you see exactly how uninterested the film is in him, evident by the fact that we barely spend any time with Buffalo Bill until the final climax, because Buffalo Bill is a MacGuffin. He only exists as another serial killer in order to give a new character, Clarice, a reason to interact with Lecter. Lecter is the main antagonist of this story. Bill is secondary. It's certainly the other way around in Manhunter, which is unfortunate because Bill is involved in the climactic, quote-unquote, action of the film. And I think the lack of threat that he poses robs that scene of some crucial tension. I think the real climax comes 20 minutes before the ending. It's Lecter's escape. And after Lecter escapes, you're kind of like, oh yeah, we still have Buffalo Bill. I forgot all the fuck about him. We've been dealing with Hannibal Lecter for the past 20 minutes. I guess we should wrap up this Buffalo Bill thing, right? Sure, let's just have Clarice walk up to his door and he opens it. Sure, there he is. She's gonna walk up to some random house. Buffalo Bill's gonna open it, and they're just gonna go. And you're not really that worried for Clarice because, well, she's going face to face with the second most dangerous killer in this movie. Oh, she's already gone tete-a-tete with Lecter, and she survived that. So how hard could this be? And
well, Lecter was in a cell every time they interacted.
Yes, up to this point, but luckily Buffalo Bill's not going to really try to come after her, is he? He's just going to kind of play cat and mouse with her in the dark.
Well, he doesn't know she exists.
What do you mean he doesn't know? He knows that she came to the door. He's well aware of her.
He doesn't know who she is until the moment she shows up in his storyline.
Not an FBI.
Yeah. My point is that in Buffalo Bill being the serial killer, he's only the secondary killer of this movie. The main killer of this movie is Hannibal Lecter, and most of the action follows him. Buffalo Bill is really a secondary subplot, just kind of something to bring Clarice and Lecter together. And so you don't really care by the time the movie ends how much you wrap up Buffalo Bill. It's just kind of gets it out of the way. Now, I want to go to this point. Now, Buffalo Bill is such a MacGuffin that they don't even bother setting up a complicated series of clues needed to catch him. All of the action of this film revolves around one simple fact. Dr. Hannibal Lecter personally knew Buffalo Bill. And that doesn't make any goddamn sense. What kind of coincidence is that? What are the odds that the serial killer thereafter used to personally know this other serial killer they already caught? Small world. And not just knew him, he used to be Lecter's patient. And not just his patient, Lecter once found the body of Bill's first victim, like many, many years ago. Small world. And not only did he find the body of the victim, but Lecter rented out an entire storage unit, prepaid it in full for 10 fucking years to hide the corpse of Buffalo Bill's first victim.
Such a coinky-dink.
Small world, small, stupid world. And so all the puzzles of Lecter, him being a brilliant psychological profiler or being able to see something that other people overlooked, none of that actually matters. It's all a red herring because it all just boils down to Lecter just coincidentally knew the guy. And once you know this, the whole movie kind of seems stupid. Like, why doesn't Lecter just say, hey, Jack Crawford, I know the identity of Buffalo Bill. In fact, I even know his whereabouts. When Clarice first meets Lecter, he has a drawing hung up very prominently, which he tells her is the Duomo as seen from the Belvedere, their buildings in Florence. At the end of the film, we find Buffalo Bill lives in Belvedere, Ohio. So Lecter even knew from the very beginning of this movie, even though he was in jail, and really would not have that much knowledge of how Buffalo Bill was moving around or where he was living nowadays. It's just a guess. But Lecter does turn out to know in the end that he's going to live in Belvedere. And he could have used this to his benefit. That's what he wants. Lecter's goal isn't to fuck with Clarice Starling. That's just kind of fun. Lecter's goal is to escape, or failing that, get transferred away from Chilton, his doctor. Now, you've got this ace in the hole of knowing Buffalo Bill's identity, and you can trade it for a good deal for you. You're going to waste time and waste games, waste the chance that the police might just stumble upon Buffalo Bill accidentally and you lose your whole chip? No, you're going to cash it in. You're not going to play games with Clarice if you're all that damn smart. You're going to cash it in and get your deal made for your transfer. I also would like to touch on Lecter being cartoonishly over the top in this. I think I talked in our case about him being almost like a parody of himself. And especially when you see him after Brian Cox. They're very different portrayals, and Anthony Hopkins is almost comical in it. Everything about his escape is contrived, right? They wheel him around in a mask and keep him tightly buckled, but when it's time for dinner, only 2 security guards come out and they use a single pair of handcuffs, and then they only send 2 guards in. They keep the door wide open the whole time. The second guard dives in. Where was all the security that we just saw? You know how dangerous this guy's is. And how much time does Lecter have to do all this? These guys would have to be expected to report in soon after safely delivering dinner. But Lecter has time to skin the face off a man, switch clothes with him, deposit that man's body onto the roof of an elevator, carefully so as to keep the gun in the dead man's hand, and then single-handedly string up the flayed corpse of Charles Napier, no small man, mind you. It's no small man, mind you.
Oh.
How the hell can Lecter hang that guy up there by himself? I mean, I don't think Brian Cox could do it, but Brian Cox at least looks like he's been doing some push-ups in prison, and Lecter just looks like he's been catching a lot of salads. So we'll see what you guys think about some of these ideas. But I wanted to, really after seeing Manhunter, and I thought about the movie so much, I was like, this really is just a retread. You just wanted to do Red Dragon again, focusing on Lecter. So we'll just make another killer, call him whatever you want, make him the same thing. He's not important. This is all about following Lecter's escape.
All right. Well, I thought you brought up some interesting points. And as Ryan said in the original episode, if we were doing Manhunter versus Silence of the Lambs, Manhunter, in my opinion, would win, deservedly so. I think it's a more interesting story than what we see in Silence of the Lambs. But aren't you discounting a lot of the technical achievements that we are seeing in Silence of the Lambs, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I am.
We're seeing a lot of very good acting.
I think we're seeing some good stuff from Foster, but not so much from Hopkins.
Well, and you said so yourself, one of the reasons Hopkins seems comical now is because it's been parodied to death, and now his original portrayal seems incredibly over the top. Right.
I mean, how over the top do you got to be when the parodies aren't bigger than you?
Well, that's...
But watching it for the first time, you've never seen that before. Don't you think that's a different feeling?
Possibly, but considering this movie came out after Manhunter and I'd already seen Manhunter, I would have gone in expecting some kind of Hannibal Lecter, and this guy would have been... And it's a small thing. I think he's just... the problem is more so that he's too strong and has not, access to knowledge repeatedly that he shouldn't, that he just has by coincidence and convenience.
But
I think that's a bigger problem.
Nobody did see Manhunter. So this was actually considered novel at the time because nobody went to go see Manhunter. Absolutely nobody. And if we're comparing those two movies, that's not what the original case was. So I think that we're hinging a lot of this on the relative qualities of another better film, but this has to be operated in a vacuum.
Well, I would say, though, we haven't talked about a Last Jedi movie. But if we did, I think a lot of comparisons to it or critiques of, say, Force Awakens would be that it's just New Hope again. But Silence of the Lambs is, for the most part, just Red Dragon again, with a little bit more focus on Hannibal Lecter.
Well, how does that work from the adaptation? Because it is based on the Harris novel.
I'm saying the book is bad, too. The book is certainly worse because he clearly just wanted to, write the same book again. So that's certainly the source of the problem. First thing I said, this might go back to the source material being stupid. But if you adapt trash, source material, it'll come out.
So as we were talking about some of the technical achievements, one of the things that Ryan mentioned in the original case that I really liked was this idea of the demi-stare, right? You have these characters looking at you in the camera, and you do get a real sense of dread and foreboding. I mean, just the first time Clarice is going to visit Hannibal Lecter, this happens very early in the movie, and you kind of feel that dread, and when you actually meet him and his eyes are piercing into you, and then whenever you cut to Clarice and how she's always kind of looking away. I mean, this is a very well executed movie just from what we're seeing. And if we're one of the things that we had mentioned in another case recently with The Illusionist is how well would a movie work like if you didn't have sound. I think everything Anthony Hopkins does, you could watch on mute, and that would be scary. Like when he's sitting on his bed with the televisions in front of him, and he's kind of in shadow and you can kind of see his eyes. I mean, that all really, really works, and
so you think he feels like a believed in, lived in human being? You think he walked around and had coffee and gone on vacation?
He's off-putting. That's what's scary about him, is that he's not
shaking hands with people.
He is kind of like a supervillain, though.
Again, I don't like to compare, but Brian Cox has the ability to sort of turn on and turn off his psychopathy where and when he wants to. Like when he's on the phone, he can act, very normal and very natural. But then he lets his guard down when, like, Will is around. Now, he knows Will. Will caught him. He has a personal relationship with Will. Clarice, he doesn't know, and yet he meets him and kind of lets his guard down with her almost instantly. I mean, he doesn't even have any reason to really trust Clarice or like her or anything. This is a guy who, at least according to Manhunter, specifically killed women. We didn't hear a lot about what he did in this film. But for him to like Clarice...
if you want to keep going back to Manhunter, too, though, this, like, let's say it is a sequel. He's been in prison much longer now than he had been originally in Manhunter, too. So wouldn't that be a factor?
That is true, though. It's not a sequel. They are canonically separated.
Yeah. So I was just saying, if you want to use Manhunter, you got to take the good with the bad in that case.
Why would he pay for a rental space for 10 years? I mean, doesn't he know how long the statute of limitations of murder is? It's not 10 years. What was your plan after 10 years? Why 10? Why not just 4? Is 4 not enough to lead people off your trail? Why do it at all? Nope. He wasn't caught for killing people at that time. Why take the risk of hiding this other guy's body this whole time?
No, it is an interesting point, and it was a head in a jar.
And all of his preternatural knowledge, all his giving out clues, had nothing to do with him being smart. He just knew the fucking guy for no reason. It's stupid. It's a stupid coincidence. It's a stupid contrivance. Even if you vote not guilty, you have to fucking agree that is a stupid, stupid contrivance that he just happened to know Buffalo Bill. What are you used to summer camp with Gacy as well?
All right, order in the court. That might be the first gavel smack of the night, unless there were some others that I missed.
Probably not.
All right, let's unless there's any other questions from Ryan or Ben, we can start locking in.
Nope.
All right, Big Ben.
Well, yes, I watched Manhunter right after we did Silence of the Lambs like you did, and it kind of bounced off of me. I hear Dylan praise it, and Ryan praise it, and you praise it. I'm glad to hear this kind of comparison now, because I think Silence of the Lambs versus Manhunter would have been a very interesting case to listen to, because I am seeing things now that I didn't see in the Manhunter original watch. But Silence of the Lambs, bad movie? I think not. There's just too much going on there. It's so interesting to look at the characters of Lecter, Jodie Foster, Buffalo Bill. These characters are Sterling. I couldn't think of her name for a second. They're iconic. Like almost everything they do just like sticks with you for like days after. I can't say that this is a bad film. Now you did knock it down a peg, sure, but not guilty.
All right, Ryan Luis Rodriguez.
Well, I did litigate this case before. Gee, I wonder how I feel about it. Obviously, if we're comparing this to Manhunter, Manhunter wins. Manhunter fucking rules. Michael Mann is the best, but it's not, and we didn't, so sorry, I'm not changing my mind. Not guilty.
All right, Maynard, I know you'd hate it if I gave you a pity vote, so that's exactly what I'm going to do.
No!
Look, I thought you made some very good arguments about the story, and here's the thing. I am a big fan of the Hannibal character, but he's so much better in Manhunter, in the television series with Mads Mikkelsen. I do think Silence of the Lambs, I mean, I appreciate the fact that it won all those Oscars, and it is an impressive movie, but like I do think its stock is going to go down, and I think some of the stuff Maynard brought up is going to be why. But there you have it. The decision in ROJ-351, The People versus Silence of the Lambs, has been upheld. Silence of the Lambs is still not guilty of being a bad movie, and my dear friends, court is adjourned.
Yay!
Wait, I want to hit my gavel too.
All right.
I don't think we do any interviews.
No, Grumbly just gave a speech.
I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah.
Oh, Grumbly. It's not going to be fun. I can guarantee you that. This is Grumbly Grumblerson reporting to you live from outside the rails of justice. This has been a momentous day in the history of this hallowed courtroom, where not one, not two, but 2 previous decisions have been overturned, forever rocking the foundation of the cinematic legal system. They pay me to read that horse shit, doesn't mean I need to believe it. That's all we have from the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis. Rawr!
I want to see him as like a spokesperson for a cereal or something.
You need some more brand. Grumbly O's. Oh,
Grumbly O's. I love
we could probably market that, and I bet we won't have to pay Ryan anything.
Hey, you're probably right. All right, hey, so I say we do our recommendations in reverse order. That way, you get to keep talking, Maynard.
Okay. Well, why the hell not? You know, I really appreciate Schlenzo going to bat for movies starring wrestlers like he did today. Too bad he came up short. I wrote that before the trial, by the way, so it would be even funnier if you didn't. But if you're going to have pro wrestlers drive the star power of your film, then you had better make them more than an afterthought or set dressing. You better make them the stars of the damn movie. Like my recommendation today, The Marine 6 Close Quarters from 2018. That's right.
Yes!
6. We all know that a film series has to be really good if it's managed to squeeze out 6 movies. Otherwise, they stop making them, right?
Definitely agrees.
Jake Carter, a.k.a. The Miz, joins forces with his mentor, the incomparable Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, to rescue a kidnapped woman from the hands of Irish terrorists, led by the man herself, Becky Lynch. Wait, handicap match The Miz and Shawn Michaels versus Becky Lynch? That sounds like a squash. Think again, because Becky ain't here to get jobbed out to a has-been and a never was. It's been a few years since Schlenzo and I blazed through this entire series bleary-eyed. I think your father and brother may have been here for this one.
They dipped in and out.
This scratches every hacker itch. It checks off every hacker square on your hacker card home bingo game. It was directed by James Nunn. That's almost a famous director's name. And it was edited by Chuck Norris. Not the Chuck Norris, but a Chuck Norris. And although it's been a while since I've seen it, I'm pretty sure Shawn Michaels super kicks a guy's head off and it explodes. I don't know. I could have made that one up. Guess you'll just have to watch it to find out. And that, of course, is the best part of all, because The Marine 6 Close Quarters is currently streaming right now on Tubi.
Oh, my God. No, that is such a prime hacker. Oh, it's so good.
Premium hacker.
As soon as you said The Marine, I knew you were going to say Marine 6. I knew it. I was ready for it.
Many other good Marine movies, probably.
Oh, God.
Ryan, what have you got?
My recommendation this week is another recent release, maybe my favorite film released theatrically this year.
Ooh.
Mike Cheslick's genuinely original Hundreds of Beavers. I can't begin to try to describe what this film is. I can tell you, however, that it is a practically silent comedy in black and white that depicts a fur trapper in the 19th century going around trying to kill beavers in a Sisyphean struggle, beavers portrayed by live actors in giant Disneyland-like furry suits. It's a movie that begins weird and only gets weirder with every passing moment, constantly escalating in a way that brings to mind the best Looney Tunes cartoons of the 1940s, shoved through a filter of 1980s video games and the best Harold Lloyd films. It's the unholy union of Chuck Jones and Guy Madden, with an aesthetic that I soaked up instantly. An aesthetic that does not suggest comedy, as most comedies are not particularly interesting to look at. This is. If the wackiness is too much to bear, just look at the pretty pictures. Take a minute to breathe and regroup, then dive back in. If you also saw Dune Part 2 and thought, wow, 2024 peaked early, you would be correct. But this is the better film. God, I love this deeply, deeply strange film. Hundreds of Beavers is currently streaming on Hoopla, which is like Canopy, but with a different name. Support your local library.
Are they associated?
Oh my God.
No, it's like different districts, I think.
I'm going to have to watch
system.
that right after I'm done watching all the Marine movies again.
Such a good... well, I mean, I'm just trying to imagine Chuck Jones and John Madden working together.
Guy
Madden.
Do they do any innuendo jokes, like beaver
They have
jokes?
Come on.
Nope.
Okay, they do completely
it's
stay away
good.
from it. Well, I mean, it's obviously what everyone's going to think.
It's also silent, so it would be kind of hard to do that. And
I guess I've watched a lot of... Never mind. Ben, why don't you tell us your recommendation?
Maynard, it was 1 year ago during the last Appeals of Justice that you issued to me a challenge to watch something and come back and let you know how it was. Do you remember that?
I feel like I do it every week, but all right.
It was Neo Ultra Q, and I'm happy to report that it is worth checking out. Billing itself as a sequel series to the original Ultra Q, where none of that Ultraman stuff happened, Neo Ultra Q to me felt similar to that X-Files revival that happened a few years back. It loves and understands the original. It has some episodes that absolutely shine. The one about a monster who runs a laundry shop for the denizens of a Tokyo suburb being my absolute favorite. The investigators are accurately captured of their older counterparts, and no two episodes are the same. There were a few that were a tad lamer, but the same could be said of most shows, and even Ultra Q's original run. No, this series was a great sequel that you can slide right into watching after the first show effortlessly, and I was sad when I got to the end and there weren't any more to follow. So yes, worth your time, and check it out, and it's only $14 on Blu-ray, I think.
And here's my next challenge for you, Ben. Now you're ready for Ultra Q Dark Fantasy.
All right, next year, writing it down.
Is that the one where they're trains?
No. No. First off, there are multiple Super Sentai series where they're trains. Right now, they're cars. Again. It's great.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. Cool. What do you got, Schlenzo?
Well, I had the occasion to watch what is truly a well put together film.
You don't know, dude.
A revisit of a cultural touchstone featuring my favorite actress, Whoopi Goldberg. No, Ben, it's not How Stella Got Her Groove Back. And no, Maynard, it's not Clara's Heart. And I'm sorry to say, Ryan, I'm not talking about Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit. No, indeed, I'm talking about Ghost from 1990. It is hip and melodramatic, and director Jerry Zucker has an eye for more than just screwball comedy. Who knew? You would have if you listened to Ryan's excellent episode about it on the Coolness Chronicles. That's who. A beautiful power couple aptly played by Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze at peak Swayze craziness have their lives shattered, in one case ended by tragedy and conspiracy.
And death.
Yeah, mostly death. Luckily, now this is where the movie starts to take a turn, you see. Swayze is a ghost, and we get to watch the movie unfold through his perspective as an observer, which could be equal parts interesting and frustrating. Luckily, Whoopi, as a crank, though now actually a real medium for some reason, enters the picture, and Swayze can start interacting with the cast. What I found to be so striking about this movie, I was rewatching it, is just how solid it is. Nose to tail, it hits every note, accomplishes every objective, and finishes clean. I probably do not need to mention the iconic pottery scene or the Righteous Brothers Unchained Melody. But what the hell? It's the season finale, Maynard. You take the high notes, I'll take the low notes. Here we go. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3. Oh, my love.
He's doing the hilarious
We legally can't do it. I'm sorry.
No.
But we will recreate the whole pottery bit.
Oh, ooh.
The hilarious guy.
I still haven't seen Ghost. I haven't. I don't know.
Yeah,
I do like Demi Moore, but
it holds up so well. And like I said, it's just remarkably solid. It's pretty unpretentious, too, when you think about it. And it's just so iconic. Like, everybody knows about that scene. It made Patrick Swayze a megastar. And
does he beat up people as a ghost at some point in the movie?
Yes, he does.
Oh, okay, then I'm in then. All right.
Yeah,
Someone should just said that. Like, Swayze kicked dude's ass as a ghost. Oh, sweet.
Oh,
He puts Ghost Baby in the corner.
No, he does. He does.
Excellent.
And
Well, with
Swayze,
that, we're all out of show, and we're all out of season.
Oh, no.
Oh,
What
no.
are we going to do?
We'll take a whole week off and come back with another season.
Oh.
It's what Super Sentai does. Why should we be any different?
You're absolutely right. And I get to be the train.
No, we're all the train. That's how it works. So we can form a super train.
Oh,
who
it's
then
a
becomes
caboose.
a robot man. Yes. And we hope everyone else will join our caboose too next time as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Appeals!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.